I can't lip read. Right.
Well, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Right, everyone got their devices off?
Airplane mode.
Kia ora koutou katoa, welcome to the 1 o'clock briefing. If I could just get David up here to sign for me, that would be great. I feel a little bit naked without that for the 1 o'clock briefing. So, kia ora koutou katoa, ko Matt Allen aho, ko te tihi o te mata te maunga, ko tuki tuku awa, ko hiratonga tuku tūranga waiwai, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Matt Allen, I'm the principal of the middle school at Scots College, and it's my absolute pleasure to be introducing Ashley, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, who, if you don't know who Ashley is, you should stand now and leave, because, and if you're one of those people that's too embarrassed to do that, read his bio, because I'm not going to introduce Ashley as the Director General of Health and tell you too much about that part. But some things that you may not know about Ashley is that he is actually a former student at Scots College. And in that time, Ashley was a huge supporter of the college and continues to be so. When he was in his final year at Scots College a number of years ago, he was head prefect, he was Dux of the school, he was in the first 15 rugby team, he played cricket, he was a lead in the production, he was also the pipe major in the pipe band. So essentially, Ashley just needed to get out more and work on his all-round character skills, because he was obviously lacking in some areas. He's also got a very strong faith as well. His wife Libby is the current chaplain at Wellesley College in Wellington. Ashley and Libby have 3 children, a daughter and 2 sons, and Matthew came through the college and finished a couple of years ago, and Thomas is in year 13 at the moment. So at 1 o'clock every day during lockdown, Ashley was the hottest show in town. He's now got mugs that have been produced with his face on it. He's got shirts, he's got tote bags, he's got artwork, he's got jewellery. Some sad woman's even got a tattoo of Ashley on her body somewhere. Well, as far as I know, there's only one of them. I don't know where on the body it is, actually, I'm not going to ask. But look, it is an absolute pleasure, to be here in this chapel, and I know Ashley wanted to be here. I know, and I was just talking to Christine before, actually, Christine had the pipe band, which is the best pipe band for a school in the country, ready to pipe Ashley in, so I know Ashley would have loved that, because he loves the pipes. He's also today, we know how busy he is, so it's amazing to get him here. He's also had to speak today to 700 doctors and health professionals at the annual Royal New Zealand College of GPs. So today's audience will be a walk in the park from this afternoon. So the format for today is that Ashley is going to present to us shortly on lessons on life and leadership from a global pandemic. And then depending on the time, we need to finish by 2 o'clock, depending on how long Ashley goes for. There's some questions that I've got that we could ask him, but actually it's the Ashley show, so if I don't have to ask any questions, that's not a bad thing, and we can throw it across to people that are here as well. And I promise Ashley I won't do the start for 10 at the end and embarrass you. I've had 3 chances to interview Ashley over the last year or so, and I did, unfortunately I got into a bit of trouble, because in one of the presentations that went sort of a little bit viral, I did ask him if he preferred the Hurricanes or the Phoenix, and it didn't go down that well with a certain sector, because he named the Hurricanes and not the Phoenix. So Ashley, I hope all the technology is working, so I'm going to pass over to you and welcome.
We'll go to Koutou Katoa, and it might be 1 o'clock, because this is not a COVID-19 announcement. You'll have to read the media release when it comes out presently to find out what's happening. But I can say that given there hasn't been an urgent media conference called, we are here on the community, which is really good. The noise, the sound was a bit distorted there, Matt, so I didn't hear all of what you had to say, but from the bits I did catch, it's probably a good thing I didn't hear all of it, because I did hear you mention tattoo, and I don't recommend getting a tattoo, and I would also add that it's not my wife who has the tattoo. Anyway, look, very sorry I can't be there with you in person. Would have loved to have calmed down. I did have the college GP conference here in Whanganui Aotearoa this morning, and went to see it all morning. So, but it is lovely to be able to join you on Zoom. I've got a hard deadline at 1:30 because I have to join the Prime Minister and Ministers for our weekly meeting around vaccines. It's quite an important one today. It's lovely to be talking to the meeting of people who are, well, who have people who are so involved in our Presbyterian schools, and obviously I've got a lifelong sort of connection to those schools, and that continues with Tom there, and also I've enjoyed not just the connection to Scots, but with the other Presbyterian schools through following the boys and their pipe band work, and I've been down to St Andrews several times over the last few years for pipe band or piping competitions. So it's lovely to be able to talk to you all. It's hard to remember what March 2020 was like actually, and I was just reflecting on that with the GPs this morning. But gosh, it was a pretty scary time, with great uncertainty playing out right through February, March, and we were having to give advice and sometimes take decisions that would have a huge. It's not every day that you give advice to close the border, which we had envisaged we might use on a very, very rare occasion, but not only that, to then sort of effectively lock the country down by the middle of just the third week of March. So it was a challenging time, and I've talked openly about waking up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat for the first few weeks, just intensely anxious about what could go wrong. Did I give the wrong advice? That it really would be a bit of a disaster. And we were watching what was unfolding, of course, in other countries. And you would have had friends, family, colleagues in the UK especially, and seeing what was happening there and being as concerned as we were. And I guess when you're in that situation of a global pandemic, I dare say if I was to have my time again, I'd probably read the fine print in my contract for Director General of Health. I don't remember reading that it would also include a 1 in 100 year pandemic. But, you know, these things come along, and I guess you're in the role and you give it the best shot you can. But I guess when you're in that situation like a global pandemic, we think about those three domains of leadership, leading self, leading others, and leading context. It's pretty hard to lead the context when it's so uncertain and so out of control. There's so many things that are just right outside of our ability to exert direct control. So one of the things I've reflected on is, of course, when the situation or the context is outside your control, then it's all the more important to really focus on what is often the hardest domain of leadership, to lead self. And you can always control your behaviours. You can always control how you respond. And of course, our behaviours are a reflection of our values and beliefs. And so I've been reflecting a bit on what were those values, what were those beliefs that really underpinned my behaviours as I tried to, in spite of the uncertainty, the huge pressure, stress, and at times great anxiety. You know, what were the things that helped guide me through that time. And, you know, one of those key core values for me, and I think about it as a meta value, is kindness. So I, for one, and I know I'm not the only one, was really pleased when I saw that the call to action that our comms, our wonderful comms people came up with was a very simple but incredibly thoughtful call to action, which was to stay home, save lives, and be kind. It's a very different message it's a very different call to action from one that says stay home and look after yourselves. So what it meant that even in our bubbles, even as we isolated from each other to protect each other, we had to remain, and we could remain, and we did remain connected, because we reached out. Communities reached out, and of course the first communities that acted to look after each other were our iwi Māori. That's why they set up checkpoints and why they and did that to protect their whakapapa, to protect their kaumata and kuia. All too real in their minds from just, a mere 100 years ago was the impact of the Spanish flu pandemic on their hapa iwi. And so they wanted to protect their communities. But we saw once we got into that lockdown where New Zealanders really embraced that collective call to action was that people did reach out and they looked after each other. And it was that call, I think, to be kind. And, I think about kindness in a way as kind of, if you think about the world's great religions, and Christianity is one of them, of course, a fundamental tenet of most great religions is to act in the interests of others, to not act in your own interest, to reach out to others and to act on behalf of others. And hence the second great commandment, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And we saw New Zealanders do that. So I have this idea that despite the T-shirts that have my face on them, and on some of those T-shirts, I'm still getting used to walking around seeing my face on T-shirts occasionally. Underneath one version of those T-shirts, it says, the curve crusher. Well, I maintain we actually all crushed the curve with our collective kindness. It was an amazing example of what can happen if people act collectively in each other's interests. And of course, my great hope, and I think the great hope of many New Zealanders who want to recapture that, is that we will apply that we will remember that and apply that to some of the other great social challenges that we face as a country in response to things like child poverty, homelessness, environmental degradation, and indeed playing our role on the world stage in addressing climate change. No one is coming, as I say to my team. In fact, we've closed the border, so no one can come. No one's coming, it's up to us. But what we showed last year was that actually we can do it. We have what it takes. We actually got all our homeless people off the street and safe. We got rid of the virus to protect our most vulnerable, our Māori and Pacifica communities, our disabled friends, our older people. And we need to capture that and harness that. A second sort of value that was really to the fore for me was this idea of leading with humility. And leading with humility is exemplified in my mind by leaders who will listen to advice. Of course, one of the great leadership skills is communication. And communication is a two-way exercise that starts with listening. So leaders who will listen, who will take advice, who will not pretend to have all the answers, but be prepared to say, I don't know, or I got it wrong, or we've changed our mind because circumstances have changed or the evidence has changed. And it's not always a comfortable place to be as a leader, but it does result in leadership that is seen to be authentic and is indeed, most importantly, seen to be trustworthy. And so of the many thousand people that have come up to me or sent me notes, messages, letters, emails and gifts over the last 18 months, the many people who have come up to me or sent me those messages who have said, thank you to you and your team. The reason we trusted you is because you didn't pretend to have all the answers, that you were prepared to say, we don't know or we got it wrong. And I think there is a great leadership lesson there. Often as leaders, as people like me, as a chief executive, we think we have to know all the answers or we should know all the answers, but actually people don't expect that of us. They're comforted by the fact that we're human. They're reassured by the fact that we don't have all the answers, that we have moments of self-doubt, that we get stressed and anxious, because that's how everybody feels. And I guess that third value that I really tried to convey and underpin my response and my contribution with was that one of compassion. And for those of us who work in the health system, it's something that's important, and when we're working clinically, but it's also important that even as we're working at a national level, when we're dealing with populations or whole countries, that we don't lose that connection to the impact that our actions have on individuals, on whānau, on communities, that we always remember that for every statistic, behind every statistic is a person who is worried, anxious, concerned, or in the case of someone who's died, a whānau in a community that is grieving deeply and has suffered great loss. So maintaining that sense of compassion in what we do, even though we're sort of addressing these issues on a national stage. I think one of the other lessons that we learned, and we had to over the last 18 months, because there was no playbook. At the start of the pandemic, we had a beautifully written, updated in 2017, extremely comprehensive pandemic influenza plan. We had tested it.
The only thing was we didn't have a pandemic of influenza. We had a pandemic of coronavirus. So we had to sort of put the plan to the side. And from that point on, we were, as we say in public sector parlance, learning it forward, otherwise known as making it up as we go along. Seriously, though, that was about listening, being extremely open to new information, to see what others were doing, being prepared to review, to adjust our position on the basis of our reviews, to be prepared to be criticised, but to never close our minds, to remain constantly curious to see how we could do things differently or better. And I do feel that the success of our response to date and our ongoing success is because of that deliberate decision and that openness to be reviewed, to constantly be thinking, how could we do this differently? What is happening? How do we need to do things better? So that was a big lesson for me. I think just perhaps a final couple of thoughts. One is that again, if we go back to that second great commandment about kindness, we can't be kind to others unless we've been kind to ourselves. And very often in our work, I'm sure in your own work, it can be personally very stressful. It can be taxing. It can be, it can really draw on all our reserves of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. So we do need to make sure that we are remaining resilient. And, a great lesson for me last year was that learning that resilient people are not the ones who just keep going. There are people, who have just seemed to have enormous reserves of energy. But actually, the resilient people are the ones who know what their limits are, who recognise when they are reaching the boundaries of what their limits are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And they take active steps to stay within those limits. There was something that I butted up against those limits last year for the first time really in my career. I've had quite senior roles, quite stressful roles in the past, but obviously last year was another sort of layer altogether. And it was this recognition that actually, if I wanted to continue to be useful and give good advice and help lead and remain authentic, and indeed remain in control of the one thing I can remain in control of, my behaviours, and centred on my values, I needed to make sure I was staying within those limits. So I'm sure this has been something you've discussed during the conference, and I trust that that's something that you are constantly thinking about, because as you give so much to others, you need also to draw on all those things that nourish your own well-being, to ensure that you remain effective, that you remain, leaderful on the top of your game and true to the vision you're trying to deliver on. We don't quite know what the future holds, of course, but that's nothing new. We didn't know last January, when in the first or second week of January 2020, what was coming over the horizon. And if anything, the COVID pandemic is getting more, not less complex, more, not less uncertain. And so we need to make sure we are all anchoring ourselves in the things that really hold us strong, standing strong, and that allow us to then be a beacon and support those around us, whether it's colleagues, our teaching staff, and of course students and their whānau within the school communities that you work in. So it's a really good point in time for us, I guess, to reflect, renew our commitment to remaining true to, and indeed in the roles you're in, our beliefs, and of course making sure that in doing so we are continuing to do our best to show what a Christian life looks like. And I guess this is one of the things that has been important to me over the last year and 18 months, is not necessarily professing beliefs, because I don't actually, but if we look at what it means to be a Christian and the life of Christ, of course, it was much more about his deeds than his words. And it is, of course, in our deeds and how we come across that is how people will perceive whether we are living a Christ-like life or not. And it brings me back, I guess, to close to that, one of those first lessons of leadership that I'm sure you've heard, and that adage that certainly was passed on to me, is that people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And I guess that's in a way our fundamental role in the roles we're in, is to ensure that we make people feel that a sense of self-worth, that we do things, that in the way we act, we are mana enhancing of others, and that we are showing them through our actions, what it means to be a Christian, that is to try and exemplify the sort of life that Christ lived. So I'm very happy to leave it at that. I've got a few minutes for questions if you have any. I am used to having questions just shouted at me, and feel free to ask me the same question twice. That happens to me most days as well, but I'll just letting you know I will give the same answer if you ask the same question. So yeah, thank you so much again to be part of your hui, and I hope you've had a great time, and I look forward maybe next time to joining you in person. Kia ora.
Because you're a busy man, and we'll throw over to Christine.
Christine is going to thank them. Remember? No, but
Okay, Christine's going to thank you with an
wow.
interpretive dance.
Guys, get that. Yeah. Use the mic. Use the mic. Oh, use the mic. Actually, it has been a great privilege to hear from you, and such wonderful lessons that we can all connect with. We can only imagine what those cold sweats must have felt like last year. Just wow, what a to have the whole nation watching you every day at that time. Was absolutely huge. But for you now to make yourself accessible to us and to other people is absolutely wonderful. And we were all pretty excited about hearing from you today. And although our pipe band was sorry not to be able to perform to you, it was teeming with rain at about 8 o'clock this morning, and I think Richard Hawke was quite pleased not to have to organise the pipe band. I said to have the day off, so he'll be quite grateful to you for that. But look, we certainly wish you well. I think we certainly sense as a community that life is not going to get or go back to being relatively simple in a short time, but to have somebody like you helping to steer us and guide us through the very complex times, and particularly a person of such mana and with obviously such great faith, makes us feel much more secure, and that we are indeed in good hands. So we thank you enormously.
I'll leave it up to you in a way. We can start the finishing up stuff now. Christine's prepared a speech or an interpretive dance, one or the other. And I've got a few housekeeping things to say, or we can chew the fat for another half hour. Let's finish, and then those of you who have taxis booked will have to twiddle your fingers for a while. Christine, do you want to come up now, and then I'll do the housekeeping?
Just on behalf of all of us, I want to thank each and every one of you for making the effort to be here today, because I do know that in our busy lives, whatever roles we play in the school, we've got multiple demands on our time. But I was really reminded throughout the conference how important, well, first of all, how blessed we are to be able to come together physically. Certainly thinking of our colleagues over in Australia, and I know that, like me, many of you will know people personally leading schools over in Australia, and it just becomes more and more difficult the longer it is for them. So we do feel blessed, and we also feel really grateful for all the people that we've been sitting with and connecting with, that other people have also really valued this time together. Every time I go to a conference such as this, I realise again the importance of network. You know, we network in our various lives with lots of different people and within our school communities and across communities, but this is a really special group, and to come here and be reminded of the really important values and aspects around our faith and our Presbyterian dimension. I've learned a lot about that this conference. Thank you, Stephanie. So yeah, thank you so very much. And of course, thank you, Stephanie, to you. I am mightily impressed by the people that you've managed to gather together for this conference. I found everybody inspiring. I've learned something from them all, and while it's had a common theme, I found them incredibly varied. I really, really do feel fulfilled, and I also think it's been lovely to go to a conference where I haven't sat there and thought, oh, I'm not doing that, oh, I should be doing that better, or the long list of things that sort of make me feel a bit anxious, like conferences can. This time I felt acknowledged, and yeah, that look, we are on the right track, people. We really, really are on the right track. We're doing amazing things for our young people. And thank you all for your kind comments about the students here at Stack. I mean, they're in your schools. We're all incredibly proud of our students. They are, dare I say, the best thing about our schools. Of course the staff are too, but you know, the students aren't always more complicated than the staff. I just think, wow, the future is in good hands, and I keep reminding myself it is their future, but we are helping to show them the way. Thank you.
One of my housekeeping things is to thank St Andrews for having us, for doing such an absolutely marvellous job in hosting us. Wow, so many wonderful things. So please thank your staff. Now, all the speakers got a commemorative bowl done locally. So there's one here. You can fight over where you put it and I can over it. But please thank your comms team and your development team and the catering team and the students and the groundsman who ran around and tidied up and made sure we had car parks and absolutely all sorts of wonderful people. So you can have the bag.
Thank you very much. We've all heard that it's about tea, and that's what we do.
Yes. So thank you so much. Another team we need to thank is the tech crew, as I've dubbed them. I think when we had the first discussions, they didn't quite know what it might entail, and they have been marvellous, and they have lowered my stress levels tremendously, both long term and going, okay, if we go into level 2 or level 3, it's fine, we've got a backup plan. But also in the last couple of days where things have happened and I haven't had to fix it myself, and you can all be thankful for that. Right, who else? Oh, thank you to all of you for coming. When I advertised that there would be the potential for live streaming, one of the comments was, no one will come to the actual conference. They'll all want to stay at home because that's what we learned to do, was, you know, stay at home and live stream. So thank you all for actually physically arriving. It's been fabulous to meet up with you all, some of you, re-meet some of you. Can I point out that on the back of the program is a link to do the feedback form. We decided to save paper, and so you just go on the link that's on the back of the program and give us feedback. It is so helpful for next year's conference and the year after and so on, if we get back the good, the bad and the ugly. So that would be awesome. What else have I got on my list? Right, those people who are in the van going to the airport, you're meeting at 2:15 at reception. Hopefully you all know that. Please all take your bags, or else Paul will auction all the contents off next week. Thank you so much for being part of this Power of the Word theme and conference. Travel safe, and let me just pray for you. Loving God, thank you for gathering us together today and yesterday, and for those of us that were here earlier, the previous part of the week. Thank you that you're going to take us all safely back to our places of residence and work. Bless the work of the church schools of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Bless us all as we go forward into the unknown future, holding tight to your hand. Amen. Disperse.
Thanks. This is the right spot, thank you, boss, for your